Hi everybody, welcome to our Wednesday Q&A here at Supermums. I'm Maria, I'm the customer success coach, and I have some very special guests with us today. So Diane is not with us this afternoon, but certainly we are joined by the Learning Curve group and Tony and Elizabeth. So today we are going to be talking about what is the Level 4 Business Analysis course, and actually how can that be free for learners? So what I will do is I will let Elizabeth and Tony introduce themselves, and then we can just start to work through what that might look like for you in the way of the apprenticeship course. So welcome, Tony and Elizabeth.
Hello.
Hopefully Tony is still with us. So we have had a few technical issues, which is why we've kind of come on a little bit late. So we'll just say, I think Tony might be back with us. No, potentially not. So what I will do actually, Elizabeth, just before we start off, if you do have any questions for us, please feel free to drop them into the comments box, and we'll do our best to answer those at the end. Or certainly if you are watching on replay later on today, then I will just be keeping an eye out so that I can answer any questions for you, should you wish to come back to the content. So Elizabeth, would you like to kick us off?
Absolutely. So Learning Curve, we are a large organisation. We deliver a wide range of programmes, be that through flexible learning, right the way through to apprenticeships, up to level 5. And obviously I'm a digital trainer that delivers the level 4 business analyst apprenticeship within our digital team. So what I'd like to share today is actually what that apprenticeship is made up of and the type of topics that might be included. So I'm hoping Tony's going to come back. So I just wanted to tell you about my bit. So within this particular apprenticeship, there's a range of modules that we're going to cover. And within each of those modules, the learner is going to gather evidence to support their understanding of those areas from the workplace. So that includes investigation techniques, stakeholder analysis, business impact assessment, business process modelling, requirements engineering, data modelling, gap analysis, acceptance testing. But we do kick that all off with a big introduction to what a business analysis is. So what are the roles and the responsibilities, the competencies, the technical abilities, what's required to be a business analyst, and to really think about where they fit within the digital sector. When a learner gets all the way through to the endpoint assessment process, it's important that they understand that wider context that they're within. It's not just their organisation. It's so much more than that. So as part of that introduction, we also look at digital trends within the industry and look at comparing them as well. That hopefully helps a learner to think about their CPD, ways in which they can develop themselves further, that there is so much more information out there beyond the realms of their organisation. Following that, we then work our way through each of these modules. As a trainer, I would meet with the learner once a month, and I would deliver that teaching and learning experience, and then set them tasks to go away and develop themselves in the workplace. What's really important as part of this apprenticeship is that employer engagement. So I'd work closely with the line manager as well as the apprentice to develop those opportunities in the workplace, to have access to evidence that they can then put within their portfolio. So I'll just move on to the next slide. That course delivery that the apprentice will experience is made up of those webinars. So obviously we're remote. So using through Teams, Skype or Zoom, I can deliver a webinar. And within that, we might have discussions, we might have tasks to complete or breakout rooms to be able to really pull apart a topic and for me to assess someone's learning, which comes into the validation of learning. On a one-to-one basis, I would make sure the learner is making progress, that they are engaging with the tasks that I've set, that they have got those access to opportunities in the workplace, and I'll set them, like I say, set those tasks for them to complete. I'll provide portfolio support, and I can be as hands-on or as hands-off as that learner needs. So it's very much on a case-by-case basis.
Can I just ask a question, Elizabeth, just before you carry on? What is the expected kind of study time when you're setting tasks and homework? What's the study time that they would need to allocate?
So this very much needs to be within the working hours of the apprentice. So
Right.
no evenings, no weekends. So that's
Okay.
where that employer support's really important. We do have something that's called 20% off the job. I think that's recently changed to slightly less than that. It's around 6 hours a week rather than 8 hours a week. But it would be across the working week, making sure they've put some time aside for studying. So I would recommend across a month that it equates to around half a day to be able to really sit down, write up the reports, collate all the evidence, and make sure it meets the standards of the requirement. In terms of developing themselves as an individual in the working environment, that's across their working week. So that's where I want the employer to provide those opportunities. But study time, I think a half day as a minimum per month would really benefit the learner to consolidate everything for the portfolio.
Brilliant. Thank you.
So the makeup of this apprenticeship is a number of components that would lead to that overall grade. So it's one grade at the end, which is either a pass, a merit, or a distinction. Fail doesn't come into it. It's one of those things. In order to get to that point, the learner's going to create a portfolio of evidence, as I've explained. They'll also then put forward a 500-word project proposal summary of a project that they're going to undertake in the workplace up to the point of implementation. So they don't need to have actually delivered it, but the intention needs to be there. It's a real life project. But for the reporting side of it, to the point of implementation over a 6-week period. So they're going to write their 500 words, they're going to submit their portfolio, and they would have completed their off-the-job requirement where they're going to document all of these opportunities they've had in the workplace to develop themselves further. Support and guidance is given around each of those areas. They're not on their own. Once that's submitted, that 6-week period is then given to us by the Endpoint Assessment Organisation, which in this case is the British Computer Society. Over that 6 weeks, that project is going to be undertaken. It can't be undertaken previously, has to be within those 6 weeks. The project will take place. The learner will then write up a report of around 5,000 words, give or take 10%. And they'll also produce a PowerPoint presentation where they're going to summarise the project that they've been a part of. That then gets uploaded to the portal and we await the interview date. So the learner will then go forward to have a professional discussion and an interview with the Endpoint Assessment Organisation, where they would have had oversight of the learner's portfolio, the project, to have come to sort of a structure as to the type of questions that they would like to ask during that final interview. And they're not looking to trip the learner up at all. It's really to stretch and challenge and make sure the learner has had every possible opportunity to showcase everything they've learned, everything that they can do to get that overall holistic grade. So that's the end-to-end process. So as you can see on here, there are a number of areas that we need to achieve and it all comes together for that one overall grade.
Brilliant. And so what's the time frame of the course?
So the course is delivered typically over an 18-month period, and we work to that. However, if a learner has access to lots of opportunities in the workplace, or they're able to dedicate more time to the apprenticeship, they can look to complete after being on programme for 12 months and 1 day. So it's always a case-by-case basis to see how that employer and the learner respond to the workload, the opportunities they have as to whether they can complete a little bit sooner. But in terms of my planning, it definitely starts on the basis that it's an 18-month programme.
Right. Okay. So that's really helpful, isn't it, to know? And so we do have a question here, and maybe we can cover this on the next question, because there is certain criteria, isn't there, for this apprenticeship. So I know one of our US watchers has actually said, is this available for US residents too? So Tony, would you like to explain about kind of the criteria that that needs to be met?
Yeah, absolutely. Firstly, thanks, Elizabeth, for that, and thanks for organising everything today, Maria. So, good question. And the process that we're implementing for this particular programme, with it being an apprenticeship, the key criteria mean that you do have to be based in England. So, again, even Wales and Scotland fall under a different funding regulation. So, this is only open to any residents living in England. They need to be employed and work in a contracted minimum of 22 hours per week. They're 3 of the main criteria elements to bear in mind with the programme.
Okay, so that's really, again, that's really useful to know, isn't it? And certainly around that, if there's anybody that is watching who does fall into that criteria, then please do reach out to myself, and I can talk more about that actually towards the end, because I'll put some links on for people to be able to reach out to us to make further inquiries or register interest. So tell me, what are the benefits of somebody coming and doing this apprenticeship?
I think from the past experience, the program that we've run now already, Maria, it's been really successful over the past 18 months. The feedback from the people that are coming onto the program, they recognise that there's some real benefits directly from their side. Obviously, a business analyst level 4 gives people who might already be in a fairly experienced role that formal recognition and new skills and develop new skills and knowledge that are going to really catapult them within their career progression. So there's the key parts to it, I guess, are that it satisfies job needs that are in demand from an employment point of view. That'll give them an opportunity to impart their business analysis subject knowledge into the new job roles that they're working in. So it's not just to benefit them in their job role, but also it gives them a knock-on effect from the employer's point of view. And at the same time, of course, it means that the skills that they've then been taught and the accreditation that they've got, it gives them the opportunity to increase not only their knowledge and skills, but also their earning potentials over any period of time as well. And we're finding from a national recruitment point of view within England at the moment, obviously it's a job role that's really in demand, and it gives people a great opportunity to earn some money, a higher revenue from what they could be potentially earning. I think the other aspects to the funding side, and in terms of what the program sort of brings to the table, is along with the BA side, there's also some Salesforce accreditations that are incorporated within the program. So it has that added value for anybody that wants to come on the program as well. So they get a choice of 2 funded certificates within the program delivery. And obviously they get to experience some of the webinar sessions with Heather Black from Supermums as well on a regular basis, to, again, just underpin some of their existing skills and knowledge from Salesforce point of view as well. Going back to some of the eligibility criteria, that for this particular program, it is fairly important that people are working already with Salesforce. They might not already have their administration certificate or exam, but as long as they're working towards that, we can then still facilitate them within the program as well.
Okay, so that's great, isn't it? So it's a really comprehensive apprenticeship, isn't it? Sort of over that 18-month period. So how can learners learn for free? How does that work?
Right, so good point. I think the funding eligibility part is the key issue here. There's 3 different routes you can go down. So as long as you're employed within England, and as I said, you've got that 22-hour contract. The program, as Elizabeth mentioned earlier, is over 18 months. So the key elements here are you need to have an employment contract that's going to last the duration of the program that you're working on. The funding then can be paid for either by your employer. So if you're employed, they can access what they call government funding, and the government will pay 95% towards the cost of this qualification. So to give you an idea, if you went to a college or you wanted to fund this qualification yourself, the actual cost would be £18,000. Now, by doing it via this scheme, it's really cost effective. It means that you don't have to take the loan yourself. It means that your employer, while you're working, pays for you to study during your normal working hours, as Elizabeth mentioned earlier. So that's up to 6 hours per week. The government, as I said, pay 95%, and then your employer would pay the 5% contribution, which is split each month over the duration of the delivery of the program. So typically over the 18-month period, the total cost would be £900 to the employer. And that's funded by what they call a digital apprenticeship service. It's a government portal that we work with the employers to set up on your behalf. So there's, all that's taken care of behind the scenes. The second option would be if you work for a larger employer whose payroll each year exceeds £3 million, then they pay already into a government levy, a tax, if you like, and that's the equivalent of 0.5% of their annual payroll. So each month, the government will take this tax from your employer. That goes into a digital account, a funding pot, and that money can only be spent on recognised and approved apprenticeship standards. This is one of those recognised apprenticeship standards. So the full cost for the £18,000 can be funded quite comfortably by your employer's apprenticeship levy. This is really what it's all geared towards, to give people formal accredited qualifications, develop existing staff, and that can be another option. But as I said, that's typically a larger organisation. For any smaller ones or smaller charities who might not have the capacity to even fund the £900 government co-investment, the third option, which has probably been the most popular one, is because of the partnership that we enjoy with Supermums and Salesforce. Salesforce is a global organisation, have a huge footprint in the UK. Their apprenticeship levy fund is quite significant, and they don't spend the full amount themselves. One caveat within the apprenticeship levy is if funds aren't spent within 2 years, the government takes that money back from them. So Salesforce have been really supportive to meet the needs of some of their partners, some of the smaller organisations, and they'll actually gift or transfer this money to cover the costs for the full cost of the apprenticeship, the full £18,000. There's an application process behind the scenes that we would talk applicants through. It's an A4 document that we submit, a bit of a case proposal for each individual employee. That goes to Salesforce, they review that, and then with approval, we then get that funding mechanism covered off, and we activate that. So Learning Curve Group is the training provider in this particular position. We support your employers behind the scenes to take care of all of that. So all that's already taken care of and addressed fully.
Right. So that was going to be my next question, because when you hear the word sometimes funding or levies, and it can sometimes be quite a complicated process, can't it, if you're having to fill out forms, but the trainees are actually, and the candidates are actually fully supported with that.
Well, through every step of the process, Maria, yeah absolutely. So the process we've enjoyed, we've already got groups of cohorts that have joined this program quite successfully. And really engaged. And again, the feedback is the fact that we sort of take away a lot of those pinch points. We'll guide you through that along with your employer and Salesforce, or whether you're going down the SME government co-investment route. We can support and step by step, just make sure that each part of the process is completed fully. And we look after all the compliance, all the quality. So there's no comebacks to any individual. And because it's a government apprenticeship, again, there's no clawbacks for funding either.
I think I just lost you at the end there, but I mean, it's brilliant to know that, candidates and trainees are supported, because that can be quite daunting, can't it? So to have that support around them. And so just talking about that, Elizabeth, can I just ask, I know that you'd mentioned that the candidates get one-to-ones with yourself. How else are they supported through the process?
So the progress reviews with the employer are really key to the process. So that happens every 10 to 12 weeks. And obviously there's a number of sessions with myself and the learner between those 12 weeks as well. So by having that touch point, it does push the employer to be involved in that process. And you can put support mechanisms in place if intervention needs to happen to engage a learner to be more effective, or to make sure they are feeling engaged in the programme. That's been a really big help to have that milestone to work towards each time. They've also got access to me in between those sessions, so it's not that every 4 to 5 weeks is completely set in stone. We can meet more regularly if that's what the learner needs. So I have got some learners on my caseload who I reach out to maybe every couple of weeks just to check that they're okay, that they understand what they're doing. Do they need some further tasks or direction? That's for learners that maybe want to fast track and obviously have access to opportunities. So it does come down to the learner, but I'm here every step of the way to guide and support. They're given access to resources to take on further learning as well. So we use a site called Pluralsight that also delivers pre-recorded webinars, but on specific topics that link to the curriculum. So there's lots of arms of support throughout the whole journey.
And I guess, although they are part of a bigger cohort, having every journey is individual, isn't it? So it's really important to have those different touch points and be able to have access to yourself to be able to perhaps get that additional help or those additional needs met where at different touch points through that journey. So I know me and Tony have said this previously, when we kind of talk about the apprenticeship, I think some people do think it is too good to be true when we kind of hear all these things. So is there anything kind of before we finish up today that you would just like to, tell our audience in relation to the apprenticeship?
I know from a trainer's perspective, when I am reviewing and assessing portfolios or looking at the level of engagement, I've noticed that there can be a trend of those that don't engage are those that feel overwhelmed by how much work they need to do. And that's where it comes down to that really crucial relationship between me and the employer, as well as with the learner, so that they feel supported. And that if we need to break down the tasks into smaller chunks for them to manage, that's completely doable. Every learner is approached as an individual, not as a wider cohort. So it's removing that anxiety from the beginning if a learner is concerned about that sort of additional commitment on top of their job. So there is that support mechanism there.
Yeah, that's brilliant, isn't it? And just to know that you feel supported and that you can reach out, I think that's sometimes the barrier, isn't it? Because people feel that they can't if they're overwhelmed. But having that open communication is key, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think one of the key points to remember as well, Marie, I think, you mentioned it earlier, we've touched on this with employers previously and with learners. People want to come onto the programme. And when you suggest that things are too good to be true, people are obviously a little bit sceptical, and rightly so. But just to re-emphasise, this programme, we as Learning Curve Group, we've been established since 2004. We have, somewhere in the region of 1,500 staff. We've delivered this program now successfully for over 5 years, and we work with somewhere in the region of 4,500 different employers throughout the UK. So you're in a safe pair of hands when it comes to the quality aspect of it. And just to give people that reassurance that if you go to a college or you wanted to enroll in one of these programs yourself and fund it as a learner loan, then as I said, it's a significant cost that's involved here. The whole point of the apprenticeship levy, the way that was introduced in 2017 by the government, was really just to give employers the opportunity to invest and develop existing staff that they've already got, or new staff, to recruit new staff and really build the skills of the UK workforce. So that's why when you think it's too good to be true, you've got to remember that a lot of this is funded either via the government or it's a tax that's already been paid by your employers. So in the majority of cases, when we start and have the conversation with your employer and we explain how this can be funded, they're really receptive to it. And fortunately, with the Salesforce Levy Funds transfer application process that we've got, as I said, that we've achieved 100% success rate with that as well. So everybody who's applied for the funding to date has been successful. It is still obviously subject to Salesforce to make that final decision, but we go into them with some sort of confidence. It really meets their corporate social responsibility aspects to support a lot of the employers, the smaller organisations that might not normally get the opportunity to have this funding to invest in the staff. So just always remember that. And I think, as Elizabeth mentioned earlier, it does give you the benefit of having a formally recognised BCS accredited qualification, which is the equivalent of the foundation level degree qual. So, there's some real added value to your own benefit in sort of developing your own skills as you move forward in your careers as well.
Absolutely. I mean, it's such a brilliant opportunity, isn't it, to be able to take advantage of, so certainly from our side, it's something that we always, get very excited about, especially when we see, people come and enroll in the apprenticeship, because, it is that brilliant level of development, personal development and professional development throughout that process that really is the key. So, I mean, thank you so much, Tony and Elizabeth, for coming and sharing today. You've done a brilliant job and really given us a fantastic insight into that apprenticeship course. And I'm sure that we will have questions off the back. So certainly I will keep an eye out on the chat here, and if I need to, I might kind of come back to both of you to answer any of the more complicated questions, but certainly it's been great having you here with us live today to give us a better insight into that. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Thanks for organising. Thanks, Maria.
No
Take care. Thanks,
nice
everyone.
to see you. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.